John Wick's vendetta against the High Table reaches a fever pitch in Chapter 4, and the globetrotting battle royale that results has given us one of the best action films of our time. The latest movie in the franchise thrives and expounds on previously established mythology and character histories, while introducing new villains like the Marquis de Gramont to keep John chained to the violent life he longs to leave behind. So how does John's latest attempt to get out from under the High Table go? Spoilers ahead.
Bonjour, Monsieur Wick, and welcome to La Resistance.
First, and most importantly, there's a dog in this movie belonging to Tracker, an independent operative who's hunting John. That dog does not die, but she kills a lot. Good girl. That has nothing to do with any of what's about to follow, but someone's watching this for that information, so there you go. Chapter 4 sees John Wick and his allies openly challenging the authority of the High Table. In the opening scene, John returns to the Elder, an Elder, in the Moroccan desert who sits above the High Table. After some doomsaying on this new Elder's part, the recasting is quickly glossed over, John kills him and takes back the wedding ring the previous Elder took from him in Chapter 3. John always goes back for his personal effects, he's sentimental as hell. No luck on getting that finger back though. John's assassination of the Elder, coupled with Winston's admittedly obvious ploy to fake kill John at the end of Chapter 3 by shooting him off the roof of the Continental, forces the table to get serious about stamping out this rebellion. They deploy the Marquis de Gramont to oversee the hunt for John personally, imbued with all of their power and influence. His first act? Firing Winston, leveling the New York Continental, and murdering Sharon as punishment for aiding Wick. The Marquis pulls Kane out of assassin retirement to hunt and kill John by using his estranged daughter's life as a bargaining chip. We'll come back to that in a little bit. After a rather harried stay at the Osaka Continental, John and Winston reconnect, at which point Winston suggests a path for John to put his obligations to the table behind him once and for all, by exploiting an archaic and mythic High Table rule. Members of the organization can challenge each other to duels. But John knows enough to recognize that as a pariah in the assassin underworld, no longer associated with a family that sits at the High Table, he lacks the standing to challenge the Marquis in this way. Winston encourages John to reconcile with the Ruska Roma, the tribe that adopted him as an orphaned child. John essentially left the family in Chapter 3, having his ticket torn by Angelica Houston's director in exchange for being smuggled out of New York City. He travels to Berlin to get himself a new ticket by carrying out the assassination of Kila, securing vengeance for his adoptive sister Katya, reinstatement as a member of the Ruska Roma, and of course, the right to challenge the Marquis to a duel. High Table duel rules aren't all that different from what you'd probably imagine the rules of a duel to be. Each combatant names a second. John chooses Winston, Natch, and the Marquis chooses Kane. And over the course of a parlay, they settle on the particulars with a game of chance. Round by round, John and the Marquis alternatingly flip numbered cards, with whoever turns the higher number getting to choose that rule of the duel. John's able to select both the weapon,
Pistols,
and the location,
Sacre-Cœur,
while the Marquis, crucially, sets the duel for sunrise the next morning instead of immediately, as John was hoping for. As his final stipulation, the Marquis exercises his right to name a champion, Kane. He's naming a blind duelist as his champion in a pistol duel with John Wick, a man whose nickname comes from the fact he's good enough at shooting guns to kill the boogeyman. By this point though, Kane has displayed such prowess in combat that the odds on this matchup still feel basically even. The Harbinger, the High Table parliamentarian overseeing the duel, declares that if either party doesn't reach Sacre-Cœur by sunrise, they forfeit the duel and their lives. And Winston throws in that if John wins, the High Table has to rebuild the New York Continental that they leveled at the beginning of the movie and reinstate him as manager. It's just like a little treat for himself at the end there. Winston always gets his. The extra prep time gives the Marquis the chance to marshal the High Table's forces and all contractable heavies in Paris against John, leading to a third act comprised almost entirely of people doing everything in their power to kill the Baba Yaga, or at least slow him down long enough to make him late and forfeit the duel by default. Suffice to say, he makes good on his promise to those who would chase him from the end of Chapter 2.
I'll kill them. I'll kill them all.
He does so, but he couldn't have known at the time that he'd have to amend that statement to "we'll kill them all." Even though Donnie Yen's Kane spends much of the film on John's trail and even kills their mutual friend Shimazu for helping him, the assassin's also a father and much closer to John in ideology than any of the other killers on the hunt. Though John's late arrival would mean a win by default for Kane, his sympathy for John's plight and distaste for the Marquis leads him to help John murder the last of the grunts so they can attempt to murder each other. Like gentlemen. The duel between John and Kane begins with each man separated by 30 paces and each land glancing blows. They move into 20 paces, and Kane's shot wounds the already battered John. They move into 10 paces, impossible to miss now. And it's John who goes down, critically injured. The Marquis moves in to take Kane's gun, pleased as punch to be able to deliver the coup de grace himself, but his overzealousness and sadism have him missing a pretty important read on the current situation. John never fired his gun. His final shot takes up residence somewhere inside the Marquis' squishy brain meat, and the Harbinger declares both John and Kane free of their obligations to the table. After saying goodbye, John staggers down the steps of Sacré-Cœur to watch the sunrise over Paris, and with his dying breath, John utters the name of his deceased wife Helen as he goes to join her in the hereafter, and their little dog too. Winston returns John's body to the States and lays him to rest alongside Helen with a "farewell my son" in John's native tongue. But is John Wick really dead? True, we don't see Wick's head severed from his body or his lifeblood running down the steps of Sacré-Cœur, but everything the movie tells us in dialogue and in its larger thematic movements says absolutely. John's entire drive has been earning his freedom from the table. There's dramatic irony in seeing that freedom come in the form of death, but death has always been a close companion of Wick's for years now. Why not let his death mean sparing a friend the pain of losing the person they love most? You know, the same kind of pain that kicked off the whole franchise in the first place. In a post-screening Q&A with IGN, I asked Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski whether John actually perished in his duel. Here's how they responded.
I have an opinion, but I don't know if we should concretize. It depends on let the audience.
Let the audience.
Yeah.
I think we just wanted to feel fulfilling at the end of John Wick's journey. So whether it's John or John Wick, I'll leave it to you guys.
Stahelski there referencing the distinction the movie makes between John Wick the killer and John the grieving husband. In any case, when the audience was asked whether they felt Wick was dead, and most responded firmly that they did, a bemused Reeves responded with, So is John Wick really dead? Let others speculate. I'm saying yes, John Wick is dead. And that's okay, because with no disrespect to Keanu Reeves, the John Wick franchise doesn't really need John Wick anymore. One of Chapter 4's crowning achievements is how it expands the scope of the world of those that live under, sit at, or exist above the high table. Kane, Winston, the Bowery King, Akira, Katya, and the Ruska Roma, they're all still in play. While John's story feels resolved, the larger opera of the High Table's rule is still teeming with possibilities, especially when you consider that the Harbinger said to the Marquis that if he loses the duel with John, the entire foundation of the High Table will be shaken. And Chapter 4 closes with what very much feels like a promise to explore those possibilities in the future. We learn early on that Kane has distanced himself from his daughter to protect her from his violent legacy, much in the same way that the Casablanca Continental manager Sophia did in Chapter 3. It's only after the Marquis threatens to kill his daughter if he doesn't successfully carry out a hit on John that Kane returns to the fold. In contrast to John, Kane is characterized as having something to die, kill, and live for, all at the same time. In a post-credits scene, Kane returns to the public square where his daughter is performing violin, where we first met him. With John dead and his commitment to the table fulfilled, Kane feels safe in approaching his daughter and moves towards her through the crowd. That's when Akira emerges and pulls a knife on her father's killer. And that's where we leave it. And when I say we, I mean that's where we left it. My screenings audience, because apparently there's one city out there that's got a slightly different version of the post-credits scene, something Chad Stahelski revealed backstage just before IGN's post-screening Q&A. And at the time of this recording, we still have no idea how that one mystery city's Chapter 4 post-credits scene differs from the one the rest of the world's got. So whether it's Kane Chapter 1 or Akira Chapter 1, there are still plenty of stories left to tell in the Wickiverse. However future stories set under the High Table play out, Chapter 4 leaves room for Keanu Reeves to make cameo appearances in stories set before his character's death while giving John Wick's journey to absolution an extremely satisfying close. Thanks for watching. For more on John Wick Chapter 4, check out my review of the movie and why Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski think it's time for the Oscars to add a stunt category. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.
42 regular, wasn't it? It's Kevlar front to back, the latest in ballistic chic. Appropriate for all formal occasions, weddings, funerals, high table duels. After all, a man has to look his best when it's time to get married. Or buried.